Oscar Piastri has just revealed the shocking internal secret behind his unbelievable speed in Qatar, and the leaked report from inside McLaren confirms the real reason he looked unstoppable from the moment the lights went out. The data shows Piastri broke DRS in only 2 laps, stretched the lead to almost 5 seconds, and delivered his most complete performance since his win earlier in the season. With the updated championship standings showing only 22 points between Norris and Piastri and 25 between Norris and Verstappen, the pressure on the final 2 races is now at its highest point. Before we break down the exact leaked findings that explain why the McLaren dominated Qatar, make sure you subscribe right now, because this sprint has completely rewritten the title fight. The Qatar sprint revealed one of the clearest performance gaps of the entire season, as Oscar Piastri converted pole position into a commanding lights to flag victory. The internal analysis confirms that his pace never weakened at any stage. He built a margin of 2.5 seconds in the opening laps and extended it to almost 5 seconds by the finish. This was the end of a long stretch without victories dating back to the race in the Netherlands, and it showed that Piastri has rediscovered his peak form at the exact moment the championship enters its decisive phase. One of the most revealing elements of the leaked report is the transformation in Piastri's tire management. Across previous weekends, he struggled to protect the front axle when pushing early in a stint, but Qatar produced the opposite behavior. McLaren engineers note that he maintained ideal temperature and wear profiles from the start to the last lap. Clean air played a significant role because it prevented overheating caused by turbulence. Piastri was able to rotate the car with confidence in every long corner, and that stability became the foundation of his advantage over Russell and Norris. The performance of the McLaren itself was a decisive factor. McLaren's aerodynamic package excels on circuits dominated by long speed corners, and Lusail offered the perfect layout for that strength. The leaked data confirms that no new upgrades were fitted for the sprint, which proves that the baseline package was already the strongest in these conditions. While Red Bull battled bouncing and braking instability and Mercedes struggled with drag, Piastri enjoyed a car that remained stable through sectors 2 and 3 with remarkable consistency on every lap. The execution from Piastri matched the capability of the car. His start was described inside the report as perfect, with ideal clutch engagement and immediate traction. That launch placed him in clean air and blocked any attempt from Russell to challenge into turn 1. Once Piastri broke DRS, the strategic structure of the sprint shifted completely, because clean air allowed him to operate at maximum aerodynamic efficiency while his rivals fought tire problems from the very beginning. The rhythm he created from that moment dictated the remainder of the race. The updated championship standings demonstrate how significant this sprint was. Lando Norris leads with 396 points, while Piastri rises to 374 and Verstappen sits at 371. This means the difference between the 2 McLaren drivers is now only 22 points with 2 races remaining. Verstappen remains mathematically alive, but his title hopes grow weaker after losing another point relative to Norris. Qatar has placed the McLaren duo at the center of the championship, with every lap on Sunday carrying massive weight. Norris experienced one of his more frustrating days of the season as he remained trapped behind George Russell from the opening corners. Qatar is a circuit where following another car destroys front tire performance, and Norris paid the full price. He attempted an attack into turn 1 on the first lap but had to lift to avoid contact. From there, his front tires overheated and the window for overtaking collapsed. His comments after the race confirmed the difficulty, as he described passing in Qatar as nearly impossible when the cars have similar pace. The core problem for every rival in Qatar was the immediate pace shock created by Oscar Piastri from the first meters of the sprint. The moment he exited the opening complex, the internal analysis shows he was already extending the gap with a level of traction and rotation that the chasing cars could not match. By the end of the second lap, he had moved beyond the DRS window, and once that threshold was broken, the dynamic of the entire race changed. Without aerodynamic assistance, the competitors were left exposed to their own weaknesses, and Piastri drove away with clean air that amplified his performance advantage. Another major issue was the balance instability affecting the cars behind him. Russell fought mid-corner understeer and rear degradation, Norris struggled with front tire overheating caused by turbulent air, and Verstappen experienced bouncing and braking inconsistency. These balance shifts forced the trio to adjust their inputs constantly through long corners, which disrupted their rhythm and reduced the ability to maintain minimum speed. Piastri, by contrast, reported stable balance across the entire sprint. This difference in platform behavior meant the field never had a lap where all conditions aligned to close the gap. The aerodynamic limitations of following another car created a third problem that became impossible to overcome. Qatar's fast arcs require uninterrupted airflow over the front wing, and the moment a driver sits in dirty air, the front tires lose temperature and the rotation collapses. Norris suffered most from this penalty. Once trapped behind Russell, his front end washed wide through key radius points and prevented any attempt to line up an attack. Verstappen also lost front grip each time he tried to close the distance. Meanwhile, Piastri enjoyed clean air for every lap, which maximized the aerodynamic efficiency of the MCL39. Tire degradation exposed another clear gap between Piastri and the rest. Russell's rear tires began to lose stability midway through the sprint, Norris overheated his front tires within the first laps, and Verstappen struggled to keep both axles within the ideal thermal range. The leaked analysis confirms Piastri never left the optimal temperature window. That precision preserved his balance, allowed consistent corner entry confidence, and prevented the kind of drop-off that usually reshuffles performance in Qatar. Rivals were forced into defensive management, which eliminated any chance of applying strategic or on-track pressure. Strategic limitations compounded the problems. Sprint formats remove pit stop options, tire offsets, and undercut strategies. This structure turned the competition into a pure pace test where clean air is the strongest advantage, and Piastri's early breakaway made that advantage absolute. With no external tools available to change the rhythm of the race, Russell had to focus solely on defense, Norris was locked into tire preservation, and Verstappen could only consolidate his position. The absence of strategic flexibility amplified every weakness the rivals carried into the sprint. The psychological shift inside the chasing group became another obstacle. Once Piastri extended the gap to several seconds, the drivers behind him entered a survival mentality rather than an attacking mindset. Russell attempted to manage his tires rather than pursue the leader. Norris grew increasingly frustrated as he realized he could not mount a move, and Verstappen accepted that his car lacked the predictability needed to attempt anything risky. Piastri, on the other hand, operated with clarity and confidence. This contrast in mental states widened the performance gap without requiring him to push beyond controlled pace. Finally, the evolving championship pressure created the last layer of difficulty for the field. With Piastri cutting the gap to Norris to 22 points and Verstappen falling 25 behind, the sprint changed the stakes dramatically. Norris now carries the weight of defending a shrinking margin, Verstappen must fight against machinery limitations, and Piastri enters the Grand Prix with momentum and confidence. The sprint exposed the structural strengths of McLaren's package and the vulnerabilities of its rivals at the worst possible moment in the title fight. This shift places every challenger in a reactive position heading into Sunday. McLaren's engineering team entered the Qatar sprint carrying enormous responsibility because they understood that the MCL39 had a natural performance profile perfectly aligned with the demands of Lusail. The long radius corners, the continuous lateral load, and the absence of slow complex sequences all favored a car built around aerodynamic consistency. But turning theoretical advantage into a real track outcome placed the engineers under pressure from the moment free practice finished. Their internal models predicted that if Piastri received a stable platform through the opening laps, he could dominate the sprint. The challenge was ensuring the car hit that narrow operating window exactly when it mattered. One of the key engineering triumphs was the tire preparation sequence. Lusail's night conditions make tire warm-up far more delicate than it appears. Surface temperatures fall quickly while carcass temperatures rise slowly, and this combination can lead to a mismatch that destroys early balance. The team instructed Piastri to build heat on the fronts progressively during the formation lap without stressing the rear tires. The leaked data confirms he executed that sequence flawlessly. When he arrived at the first corner, both axles sat within the ideal thermal band. This preparation laid the foundation for the early gap he created. Engineers also addressed the aerodynamic stability that defines the MCL39. Because Lusail amplifies even small inconsistencies in floor behavior, the team spent the early part of the weekend refining rake sensitivity and the relationship between front downforce and rear load. The report shows that the car retained stable aerodynamic grip even as tire pressures and lateral load increased over the sprint. That consistency allowed Piastri to maintain minimum speed through sectors 2 and 3 without lifting at points where other drivers were forced to correct understeer or manage tire wear. This stability was one of the clearest engineering victories of the weekend. Another engineering pressure point was the launch procedure. A sprint is often decided in the first 100 meters, and McLaren treated the start as a critical project. Engineers refined clutch bite settings based on track evolution and used real-time temperature readings to adjust torque delivery until the final seconds on the grid. The analysis shows Piastri achieved ideal traction with no wheel spin spikes. This allowed him to secure clean air immediately and prevented Russell from placing pressure into turn 1. By removing the launch as a risk factor, the engineers protected the entire structure of Piastri's sprint strategy. Crosswind sensitivity presented another challenge at Lusail. Even at night the circuit experiences unpredictable gusts that unsettle cars at high speed, especially in turns where downforce load shifts. The leaked report reveals that McLaren prepared for this by adjusting aerodynamic balance earlier in the day to widen the stability envelope under lateral disturbances, while other teams reported sudden rotation losses and mid-corner deviations when winds changed. The McL39 maintained stable platform control. This gave Piastri the confidence to commit fully to each corner without adjusting his steering inputs for environmental changes. The engineering group also had to manage power unit thermal stability. Although night races appear cooler, the high-speed nature of Qatar produces massive temperatures throughout the engine and electrical systems. The team continuously monitored thermal deltas across the sprint and gave Piastri instructions to push only when the cooling curve allowed. The leaked data confirms that no derating occurred at any point and the power unit delivered full output for the entire race. Maintaining this stability is vital because even minor derating would have allowed Russell to regain DRS. The engineers preserved performance without forcing Piastri to take unnecessary risks.